Hey everybody, Lucas from our Liberty House here, and today I'm going to do a new little YouTube series. We're going to call it Talking Tomatoes, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about growing tomatoes, everybody's garden favorite for the most part, and we already did our transplanting tomatoes video, so check that one out. We'll link it right here. And then this one we're going to talk about pruning, and we'll probably do some other stuff about trellising later on and just care throughout the year, but this one's going to be specifically about pruning. And this is all for indeterminate tomatoes. If you're not familiar, check out determinate versus indeterminate. But these are gonna just keep growing, so we have to prune them. We don't have to, but you'll get better results. And let's go over, I think like the 3 reasons we prune, kind of break it down easy. We prune for shape, or to like train it per se up a trellis. We prune for disease prevention, and that's gonna come in like keeping some of the leaves off of the ground. We prevent disease and fungal infections later on through the growing season. And then lastly, we prune for quality. These tomato plants will branch out and branch out. They'll probably produce more fruit, but the quality might not be as good because it's trying to ripen so many fruits, where if we prune it for quality and consistency, we kind of know what we're gonna get from each tomato plant. So let's get going. I'm gonna kind of flip this video around and just show you guys what I look for when I prune my different tomatoes. All right, before we get started, I realize we should probably talk over some tomato vocabulary so everybody's on the same page when we actually get to cutting and identifying different things. So we're gonna talk about sun leaves, suckers, flower clusters, and leaders, or like leaders being the main stems. So those are the kind of things I'll talk about, and I'll use that vocabulary a lot when we're looking at all of these plants and starting to prune them. So let's kind of flip around here and I can show you some good examples. All right, so this is 2 of our Berkeley tie-dye tomatoes from San Diego Seed Company. They're looking super good. And then let's talk about some vocabulary. So these big non-fruit producing leaves, these are sun leaves. They just help the plant with photosynthesis and bring enough energy and actually help shade the fruit, shade their roots. Pretty important anatomy to this. And then let's go up and talk about flower clusters. We actually have a tomato forming here, and you can see new flower clusters. And then we can talk about leaders. So obviously this was one main stem, and then I'm splitting it into 2 leaders, and you'll hear people talk about single leadered tomatoes or 2 leader tomatoes. And so we're really going to try to do mostly single and 2 stem. This one was just like almost like a perfect split, so I thought it would be a nice addition. And then what we hear all the time is prune your suckers. So let me find a good one. There we go. See this guy right here? That's a sucker. So you have your main stem, you have your sun leaf, and then the main stem keeps going. We just have this new growth right in there, and that's a sucker. We don't necessarily want it. So the small ones you can just pinch off. The big ones, probably smarter to use your shears so you don't risk tearing the plant. So that's a sucker. And every sucker will create another kind of main leader if you let it. And that's why I was saying, if you let these bush out and branch out, they're going to produce a ton of fruit, because every sucker will then produce its own flower cluster. Where like the sun leaves are never going to produce fruit. Only the main leaders will produce flower clusters and fruit. So those are the things we're going to kind of go over for shape and structure. I'm going to kind of move to some different plants here. All right, so let's actually start pruning a couple. I have 2 green zebra tomatoes over here that I've kind of neglected pruning, and I'm going to show you mostly the number 1 thing I think pruning is good for is disease prevention, which is really important if you live in a moist climate. Luckily here in Sacramento we don't, but we used to live in South Dakota, which it rains all summer, it's very humid. So this is where thinning out your plant and getting some of these sun leaves off of the ground are really going to help you, because you're going to prevent fungal infections or help prevent fungal infections. So here in Sac, it's not so important because we have drip system irrigation. We don't really overhead water at all. Plants stay pretty dry, but I still like to limb them up a little bit and just keep everything off the ground as much. I just think it's good practice. So let's flip this around. All right, so this tomato plant, nice green zebra, also from San Diego Seed Company. It's kind of a mess right now. So what I'm gonna do, look at you, this is like a whole new tomato plant starting to grow. You can almost see it right here. It's like the sucker has suckers. So we're gonna take that, let's see if I can one-handed do this, and just trim that away. This is really hard with the current lighting. Over here. All right, see another one. Look at this thing. The sucker is growing suckers, so that's gotta go. All right, just get that whole thing out of there. All right, we're starting to get some good openness. And really what this does, even if you don't live in a wet climate, is we live in a hot climate. So here in Sac, so we need airflow. These things will get kind of burnt too hot if you don't give them some airflow. So I think if you're gonna do anything, at least limb up these bottom parts and get this stuff off the ground. All right, actually, wait, let's see. This is a sucker right here. Nice, it's, you know, extra. You can see it's gonna grow a whole new plant. Sunleaf, another main leader. But we don't want that. We actually don't want this whole thing. So we're gonna, all right, and this last one, kind of call that good for the bottom. So, let's see if I can get a good angle of what it looks like now. And you can see it looked like the one over here. I'm gonna limb that one up a little bit more too. But just a lot more airflow, and it's still shaded because it still has a crown. We're just keeping stuff off of the ground, preventing fungal disease. And let's look for some more suckers. You can see them in here. They're super little. We're just gonna take them off. We don't want them. Let's see, all over here too. Eventually I'll probably split these two, make them 2-liter systems, but right now I'm just trying to make sure they focus on their main stem. So you can see this one is kind of growing into a sunflower. So I'll just trim the top off and still keep this for good photosynthesis. I'm not going to shock the plant too much. Oh, here we go. This is a good kind of learning tool right here. So which one's the main leader, right? It's definitely this one. And we know that because it produced a stem. Jeez, I'm all over the place. A stem, and then a flower cluster, and then sun leaves. See, these are future sun leaves. And then now it's growing more. Where this one over here is just sun leaves because it's a sucker. So the first thing think about when your plant is a baby, if you started from seed, the first thing it's going to do, it needs photosynthesis. So it's going to produce flower clusters or sun leaves without flower clusters. That's how you tell. But for this plant specifically, I want it to be 2 liters. So I'm gonna keep this one because it's in a good spot, it's upright, and then I'll split them and there'll be 2 running leaders that'll produce fruit for us. And I like to keep them at like 1 to 2 liters, like I said earlier. All right, let's keep cutting. All right guys, 2 more tomatoes here, some Berkeley tie-dyes again from the beginning of the video, and these are looking pretty good. I'm still just gonna take this one off. Gonna give him some more room to breathe. I'm gonna take this one off. Definitely see this one's on the ground. So take that one off. All right. Probably leave the, oh, here's a good, see, that thing's it's trying to grow from under the ground, so we're just gonna Goodbye. It'll heal up just fine. You'll see now I got good airflow. Still got enough sun leaves to get some energy in. And then we actually have 2 liters, which I told you earlier that we were going to, try to split that one. Well, this one just naturally split and I let it go because it looked great. And now each of these sides, think of it as its individual tomato plant, because it's going to grow its own sun leaves, it's going to grow its own flower clusters, and it's going to continue its own leader, and it'll also with that have its own suckers. So we'll probably have to, so you can see right there, it's already starting to get its own suckers. You might, you're not going to catch that all the time, but I just happen to be here. Pinch that off, 2 liters. This one over here is just a single liter currently, but there is a sucker growing right there that I'll probably let continue to grow up. So I have a 2 liter system that's going to grow up this kind of modified floor to weave system, and we'll get that into the next video talking about trellises, but now we're just talking about pruning. So next I'm going to go over here. I'm going to prune my big wall of tomatoes, all San Marzanos on the left, and then just 1 cherry tomato. That's obviously, if you've grown them before, you know how fast they grow. It's the champion, so it'll be up that thick probably before June. All right, let's get going. Let's clean these up. They need some help. All right, so for this wall, first thing I'm going to do is just limb up all of the bottoms. So I'll go through and do that, and then I'll start pulling suckers and kind of planning on how I'm going to decide when I'm going to split them to 2 liter systems. And one question we get asked a lot is about our spacing. And, these are about a foot apart, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but roughly a foot, which some people are like, oh, that's too tight, 18, 24 inches. But if you single liter them, this is plenty. We could probably pack more tomatoes in here too. You just have to be on top of your pruning when you plant tight. So if you're pretty lackadaisical or like easygoing gardener, I would stick to a lot more of the recommended, 1.5 to 2 feet of spacing. So you see, I'm literally just cutting these off. And here's another one of those, trying to form a new tomato. It's getting in my pepper bed. So I'll just keep doing this, and it's probably super boring for you guys. So I'll probably finish up, show you what it looks like at the end. Because right now, this is what it looks like. I'll kind of do the same shot at the end here. All right, so we're nice and cleaned up. Good airflow at the bottom. I picked all the suckers I wanted to pick off. And then I found on here a really good example to show you guys a little bit of tomato anatomy last, just to reinforce some of the stuff. So here we have our main leader. We have a flower cluster, and then we continue up the stem, and you have sunleaf, sunleaf, flower cluster, sunleaf, sunleaf, flower cluster. So if this were to grow big, or this were to grow big, you might say which one's the sucker and which one's the main leader. Well, just remember, every main leader is going to grow in the same process. Sunleaf, sunleaf, flower cluster, and then it'll split sunleaf, sunleaf, flower cluster. So if you're looking for which one's the sucker, it's pretty easy to find out. Just using that flower cluster, sunleaf, sunleaf, flower cluster, sunleaf, sunleaf, flower cluster. Pretty easy, at least to me. So I'm actually going to split this one too, because it's only got a single leader, so I'll probably keep this one alive, and I'll just pick that one off. We're pretty much done. So kind of show you guys the last bit here. All right, guys, that's a wrap for our first kind of talking tomatoes video, just about going over pruning. Hope this was helpful for you. We'd love feedback. Find us at Instagram on @OurLibertyHouse, or comment down below. We'll get back to you when we see it. And just remember, I think if you're going to prune at all, at least prune the bottom. Just help disease prevention, because that really sucks when you get like a nice tall plant and then it gets a fungal disease and dies, and you kind of wasted however many months it took you to get there because you killed your plant. So at least prune the bottom. I think that's it for this video, and I'm going to get going on the trellising video, so make sure you guys check that out next. We're going to go over like how to trellis tomatoes, or what our personal like strategies and different techniques are. Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one. See you next time.